I am John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver, November 16th, 2019. I am talking to James Buskard, President of Nevada Exploration Inc. James, welcome to Vancouver.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
I've been following your company for a decade, and your company, in fact, has for couple decades been applying a new exploration approach to northern Nevada, which has an extraordinary gold endowment, over 300 million ounces already identified. You're using a tool called hydrogeochemistry, which has existed for many, many more decades than when you guys started applying it. What is what you are doing special? Why is what you are doing special and new for Nevada?
Yeah, trying to find new deposits undercover is not a challenge that's unique to Nevada. And groundwater chemistry is incredibly powerful in terms of its ability to basically prospect in places where we can't see the rocks. In order to use it for gold, because it's being used for commodities all over the world, in order to use it for gold, what we needed were much better analytical tools. And we needed detection limits that were low enough that we could respond to relatively small concentrations of gold, because gold doesn't really want to go into solution. So in order to use it as a pathfinder, you have to have very sensitive tools. So one, we needed the lab tools. But the second thing is, because these footprints are relatively small compared to other pathfinders that you might find if you're looking for porphyry copper deposits, for instance, these footprints are relatively small. So rather than being able to rely on existing wells and springs and windmills and stuff like that, folks looking for other commodities can use, we had to figure out how to drill boreholes to collect water samples wherever we want for a relatively small amount of money. So one, we needed better analytical tools in order to make this work, and two, we needed sampling tools to allow us to drill these inexpensive boreholes. So that's really what allowed this to be now applied looking for gold deposits.
And as far as you know, Nevada Exploration Inc. is the only company doing hydrogeochemistry in Nevada. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's even bigger than that. Because we've now overcome the hurdle of being able to drill holes wherever we want, and we've rolled this out in such a big way over the last decade and a half, we now have by far the world's largest groundwater chemistry exploration program. There's no other group that I'm aware of that's drilling holes specifically for groundwater samples like we are.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the decade that I followed the company, the story has been, well, we've collected 6,000 samples, and a couple dozen of them have kicked values, both gold and Carlin Pathfinder values that say there's something going on here. And the story has kind of dragged on because where's the discovery? But a year ago, you began a serious drill program at South Grass Valley, and you accomplished something that to me is a dramatic change from what the story has been. You found an altered Carlin Pathfinder pumped lower plate window that was completely invisible. Yes, the edges exist and have been explored by other groups like Kennecott, but they're all unaltered and boring looking. How important is what you established with this 11-hole, widely spaced, grid-based vectoring drill program? How important is it that you delivered this sort of lower plate window?
Yeah. If we look at the three big districts in Nevada, they're all products of very large mineral systems. And as we go out into these covered basins, really is the first group to go out into these covered basins, we're going after the low-hanging fruit, the big camps. We're not looking for a little deposit, we're looking for a district. And if we're looking for a district is supported by a mineral system that has a certain scale attached to it, cubic kilometers of bedrock sort of scale. And so what we had to, the questions we needed to answer with these first 10 holes are, do we have the characteristic architecture to support that sort of district scale mineral endowment? And then has that architecture been used by a mineral system of the scale that we need to see? So with those first 10 holes, and by spreading them out over more than 3.5 kilometers, we were testing for a district scale mineral system. So it's been exciting to share those results over the last couple months, and we put out some news yesterday. That's exactly what we found. What we think we found here is the biggest new Carlin mineral system that's been discovered in recent history in Nevada.
So there's other prospect generators specialized in Nevada, which have dozens of projects. Many of them have some sort of lower plate window, and they have attracted farm-in deals from other groups such as Hochschild, but they're generally weak farm-in deals. Is it the pure scale of what you found undercover that makes your play, South Grass Valley, different from these other projects that were sort of poked at in prior decades and didn't really deliver anything?
Yeah, I think there's been a real bias, if you will, if you look at those transactions that have happened in the last 5 years, groups that have done those sorts of deals, the bias has been towards certainty, if you will, projects where they know a lot already. But it's a balance between certainty and potential, if you will. And finding something small, but that's more certain, has tended to be where the dollars have gone. Whereas what we understand is where the real value is created is in finding something big. So that's what we've set out to do, and what differentiates what we're seeing at South Grass Valley versus, I would say, just about all these other projects is exactly that, the scale. What the characteristic system that we're seeing over 3.5 kilometers remains open. If we look at the geochemistry and the geophysics, we're seeing the same architecture, if you will, extending for about 8 kilometers. So that is what really differentiates the project.
Now, Barrick found the 15 million ounce Gold Rush deposit because they needed to drill a water well and stepped into the gravel covered part of that area. And lo and behold, they get a fantastic intersection, and all of a sudden they're focused and they march along and outline this long 3 kilometer plus breccia body. But then the rocks, sort of everything disappears under horrible upper plate rocks, and the geos start to think, there's something going on, and they come up with a hypothesis for like a 1 kilometer step out to the north, saying there's something going on beneath these upper plate rocks that might be related to what created this Gold Rush deposit. And they drilled 10 deep snake eyes before they hit the intersection that says, wow, this is something different. It's like Carlin, North Carlin, Gold Strike type thing, really high grade, complex and deep, but who knows where this is all going to go. And this is now called the 4 Mile discovery, and it's so interesting that they excluded it from the consolidation of Newmont's and Barrick's Nevada assets into one. They'll eventually put it in, but they think there's something big. You drilled 11 snake eyes in the sense that all you got was anomalous gold and pathfinders, and the market was bummed out about that. Why is the market happy that 10 holes is great, 11th should be the discovery hole? Why are they being unfair in being bummed out about what you have accomplished at South Grass Valley?
I think there's this misconception that if we look at those 10 holes at 4 Mile, they were not snake eyes. Every one of those holes helped peg the geologic architecture that allowed the Barrick team to understand what was important, what the controls were, where the hydrothermal fluids went, where they came from, where they were likely to have dropped their mineral budget. So these sorts of early wide space holes are not snake eyes. The amount of information that we get from them is incredible. And South Grass Valley is comparable in size to the North Carlin trend. And the mineral endowment there, 80 plus million ounces in the northern part there, has been fleshed out with tens of thousands of drill holes. So to put 10 drill holes across a similar sort of area, what we're trying to do is peg what are the units, what are the structures, where did the fluids go, was there a gold component? The sorts of questions that you're looking to answer for those first 10 holes are incredibly important. So I don't consider them snake eyes, and nor did Barrick, because obviously they put that information together. to figure out where they needed to go to ultimately make their discovery.
So they were able to use the geology to guide their follow-up drilling. So it wasn't just a random grid, it was a circling and compiling the data. And you've just published a video, a 20-minute video, which I watched this morning, was mesmerized, and I say, wow, you know, with that several $1 million that you spent drilling these holes, you've put together the sort of geological context for this, you know, North Carlin equivalent scale system, and now you want to go in there with a 9,500 meter RC program rather than core program, because now you're hunting for the gold grade, whereas before you were trying to build the context to where should we start doing the sniper type of kill shots. And you've got 4 targets in there that are now your stuff. How important is it that you have now these 4 targets RC drill ready?
Yeah, so if we look at any of these big camps, exactly where you are in that mineral system, whether you're right up against the intrusive or you're further off in a breccia-hosted unit, those specific geologic settings and intersections of conditions lend themselves to rather unique deposit types, each of which you look for with slightly different exploration strategies. So with these 4 different targets, they're each different. We have to take a different approach at each. So what that allows us to do is be far more efficient in terms of how we move forward. So yeah, they give us a much clearer roadmap and much clearer understanding of what we need to see in order to keep going.
Now, 2020 is a watershed year because that's the year the youngest boomer will be 55 years old. And in Canada, if you're 55 or older, buying resource juniors is unsuitable. And so we're all forced to go to a discount broker and figure out how to do this, figure this out on our own. But your company has pioneered in terms of using video and 3D graphics and that to help us understand early stage exploration plays. And I'm wondering, the post-boomer generation, everybody born after 1964, who are into cannabis and other things like that, momentum trading, they don't seem to even be aware of this space. Do you think engaging them more in the whole process of understanding the exploration play, becoming part of the whole thinking process, do you think that could bring the post-boomers into the junior resource sector?
I think there's a couple things. Regardless of what sector you're investing in, people like a story. They want to understand the narrative, where you are, where you're trying to get to. And what that sort of media allows us to do is not just bring them into the story, but allows them to understand what we're trying to accomplish along the way. And it's up to us to set the market's expectations in terms of what the first 10 drill holes are going to hit. And if we don't take control of that narrative, they can be framed as 10 snake eyes, right? So it's up to us to set the meter stick that we're then judged by. And that sort of medium lends itself really well to providing that context. But I don't think we can do the best job ever with this social media stuff, with these videos. But at the end of the day, we still have to find stuff. We still have to create value. And I think what we need to do as an industry to get people to come back or get the millennials to come in is demonstrate that $1 in is going to equal $1 plus on the way out. And if we look at what we've done as an industry over the last decade, there's been about $200 billion spent on exploration, only about $100 billion found. We've made $100 billion vanish, and people aren't lining up to repeat it. So if we want to get millennials or anybody to come back into the sector, we need to demonstrate that we're going to do something different, and we need to show them that we're doing something different. So that's where we feel the videos and that sort of stuff fits in.
I started off this interview talking about your regional sampling program with dozens of potentially interesting undercover targets, but you focused in on South Grass Valley. It has the scale of North Carlin. if you actually deliver a North Carlin, the stock would go to the moon because people would recognize it, one meaningful ore grade intersection. But what's more interesting, and this should also appeal to the post-boomer millennials, is if you get validation of your approach, your 20 years in the wilderness, the deserts of Nevada, you can start repeating this all over. Do you have your map ready with staking instructions where you can suddenly show up with a dozen squares in obscure parts of Nevada the day, a week or so after you announce a discovery at South Grass Valley that says, maybe we can do this 10 times over?
Well, there's not a dozen Carlins in Nevada. There's Carlin, there's Cortez, and there's Getchell. There's 3 major Carlin camps. So I don't expect there's another 12. But for every one sticking out of the ground, there's one under the gravel. So there's likely about 3. And we happen to have 3 projects, 3 large district scale projects. So I feel pretty good about the land holdings that we have. But yeah, we do have some additional ground that we could pick up pretty quickly.
So you're leveraged in more than just a single discovery play.
Absolutely.
I've been talking with James Buskard, president of Nevada Exploration. Thank you, James.
Thanks, John.